Sri Lanka is preparing to welcome a ship. Not just any ship, it's a Chinese research vessel. It's called Shi-Yan-6. It is expected to arrive at the Colombo port in October. Now, officially, Sri Lanka has not said anything. Their Navy says, we are unaware. But reports say permission will be granted soon. And it won't be surprising because this won't be the first Chinese vessel in Sri Lanka, the first such Chinese vessel. One of them arrived last week. A warship with surveillance capabilities. It's around 129 meters long. It is manned by 138 sailors. This warship arrived in Sri Lanka on Friday. It stayed overnight and left on Saturday. That was not the original plan, though. The warship was set to arrive much earlier. It was delayed because of India's concerns. India raised some concerns. Reports say Sri Lanka briefed Indian officials on this warship. Only then was permission granted. The government of India did not confirm this report, but it did say that all developments were being monitored. Listen in.
I've seen reports of a Chinese ship there. I'm not sure whether it is a warship or not. I will only say that having seen these reports, I would emphasize the government carefully monitors any development having a bearing on India's security interests and takes all necessary measures to defend them.
Now, there is talk of a second voyage. The Shi-Yan-6 is based in Guangzhou. It is currently in the South China Sea. It is sailing towards Sri Lanka. Reports say it will arrive by late October. It will stay on in Colombo until the next month. So the voyages are becoming more brazen. There was a similar one last year. China's Yuan Wong 5 vessel docked in Hambantota in Sri Lanka. India had objected, but Sri Lanka went ahead. The second voyage came almost a year later in August 2023, but the third one is slated for October, so the gap between them is shrinking. Why is India concerned about this? Because of two reasons. Number one, strategic concerns. India believes these Chinese ships will snoop on military assets, and knowing China, it's certainly possible. They keep sending so-called research vessels to Sri Lanka, but all of them have dual functions. Yes, they can conduct research, but if need be, they can also snoop. Reason number two is influence. Sri Lanka was part of India's sphere of influence. Now you have Chinese warships docking there. Clearly, it's an affront. Sri Lanka's president, Ranil Wickremesinghe, visited India last month. He promised that such things would not happen. He said Sri Lanka will not become a base to threaten India. His envoy to New Delhi went a step further. He said India's security is Sri Lanka's security. Great words. But days later, Chinese spy ships are heading to Colombo. What do we make of this? Sri Lanka is clearly saying one thing but doing another. And frankly, it was predictable. China owns around 20% of Sri Lanka's external debt. More Chinese firms are entering their market. The latest one is Sinopec. It's a Chinese oil company. It will start Lankan operations next month. My point is very simple here. Sri Lanka may want to distance themselves from China, but they're in no position to do so. The loans give China considerable influence over Sri Lanka. The question now is, how far will Beijing push Colombo? Just look at what happened last week. Sri Lanka decided to join the RCEP. It stands for Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, RCEP. It's a trade bloc dominated by China. More importantly, India is not a member of this bloc. We exited the talks in 2019, so financially, China is pushing Sri Lanka a lot. Same story with the military. More and more Chinese warships are sailing to Lankan ports, which makes you wonder what is going to happen next. Could there be a military base in Sri Lanka? A Chinese military base in Sri Lanka? A new report says it's very much possible. In fact, Hambantota is among China's top options for a naval base. They've already invested close to $2 billion there, plus they virtually own it. The Hambantota port was handed over to China on a 99-year lease. India will be hoping that things won't get to that. Trade and investments are one thing, but hosting spy vessels is a red line. India has let it slide twice. But for how much longer? That's a question both Sri Lanka and India will be thinking about. So after 76 years of independence, India is projecting confidence. China, on the other hand, is losing it. Their economy is showing signs of serious trouble. The numbers do not look good. So what does the Communist Party of China do? Stop sharing them. That's the decision they took today. China will now not release their youth unemployment data. In June, it had crossed the 20% mark. That's a record high. 20% unemployment means 1 out of 5 young people in China does not have a job. And China has a lot of them, a lot of young people. 96 million people are between 16 and 24 years of age. That's the youth of the country. 20% of them do not have a job, did not have a job in June. What about the numbers in July? Well, China has not released them. And today they declared that they will not release unemployment data. You may ask why, and we have the answer from the horse's mouth. Listen to this.
Starting from August this year, the nationwide urban unemployment rate for different age groups, particularly among the youth, will temporarily cease to be released. The main reason for this is due to the ongoing development of the economy and society, which requires continuous improvement in statistical practices. Survey statistics of our labor force also need further enhancement and optimization.
We need to improve the process. That's the explanation from Beijing. The focus should be on improving the job situation, but China wants to fix the process. It won't help. This year, more than 11 million students are graduating from college in China. That's the highest number of graduates China has seen ever. So they're churning out more professionals. But the job creators cannot keep up with this supply. Even the Chinese government is not being able to create these jobs. Every year, China holds a national civil service exam. This is to fill entry-level positions in the civil service. Last year, 37,100 positions were advertised. But do you know how many graduates appeared for the exam? A record 2.6 million. Needless to say, the Chinese government did not hire everyone. In fact, that would be an unfair expectation. No government can be expected to employ everyone. No government can create millions of vacancies every year. But in China, the government is also devoid of empathy. Xi Jinping is dishing out advice for the jobless. Last month, he told them to pick up their bags and move to the countryside. In fact, let me quote from what he said. They should learn to eat bitterness. That's a Chinese expression. To eat bitterness is to endure hardships. So the president is basically telling graduates to take up hard labor in the countryside. Obviously, they don't like it. And today, Beijing decided to suspend unemployment data. It is trending on Chinese social media. The decision is being heavily criticized. Let me show you some comments from Weibo, which is their version of Twitter or X. One user says, and I'm quoting, "Covering your mouth and closing your eyes, can that really solve problems? With flexible employment, slow employment and independent employment, working for just 1 hour means you're not unemployed. Don't take the statistics from the Bureau of Statistics seriously." Here's another one. "As long as I don't announce it, then nobody is unemployed." You see, youth unemployment is a serious issue in every country, and China is no different. Students go to college because they want well-paying jobs. They want to build skills in their chosen field of study. They want to become professionals, not laborers in the countryside. Ignoring their plight has cost governments dearly. In democracies, you can be voted out of power. But even in a dictatorship like China, unemployment can lead to serious problems. And Chinese experts have been issuing warnings about this. In the month of June, a leading think tank published a report. It said rising unemployment could lead to internal instability. Let me quote from that report. "If it is not handled properly, it will cause other social problems beyond the economy, and it could even ignite the fuse of political problems." I'll repeat that last part. It could ignite the fuse of political problems. This is the worst fear of the Communist Party of China. They cannot handle any challenge to their authority. So the only way out would be to create jobs and try to diffuse this. How do you do that? How do you create jobs? By attracting more investment. But even that is an uphill task. Foreign investors are not interested in China anymore. Look at the numbers. This month, Chinese markets witnessed a sell-off. Overseas investors dumped Chinese shares. Do you know what was the value of their trade? More than $5 billion. This could be the biggest exit from Chinese markets since October last year. And what happened in October last year? That's when China was pushing with its zero COVID policy. When the economy couldn't take it anymore, China scrapped zero COVID. For a while, it did help. The growth rate improved, but it did not last. China soon lost the momentum. Their economy was struck by the perfect storm: a sinking real estate sector, rising levels of debt, falling investment, and now record high unemployment. The dragon cannot play ostrich and get away with it. And staying with the US, our next story may be triggering. It's the story of a 13-year-old girl from Mississippi. Last year, she was doing what kids do, playing right outside her home. That's when she was raped by a stranger. She ended up getting pregnant. She wanted, needed an abortion, but she couldn't get it. Do you know why? Because the law in America does not allow it. So now this 13-year-old child has given birth to a baby, and soon she will start 7th grade. It's a horrifying story. It should fill you with rage. America should be ashamed for what it's doing to this child and others like her. They've banned or heavily restricted abortion in more than 20 states. A decision came from the US Supreme Court last year. In one fell swoop, it struck down the federal rights to abortion. It denied 25 million American women the right over their bodies, including this child who has now been forced to become a mother at 13. Last year, a woman in Louisiana got pregnant. She was carrying a fetus with no skull, meaning her baby would die soon after birth. She sought an abortion. She was denied it. In Ohio, a woman was carrying triplets. She had a high risk of dangerous complications. She wanted an abortion, again denied. This is the reality of life in America. Women have been forced to return to a time half a century ago. That's when abortion was last illegal across most American states. And what was the result? Women who could travel out of a state to seek an abortion did so. Others unwillingly carried pregnancies to term or tried to end them on their own. It was unregulated and dangerous. Women turned to coat hangers and chemicals. Even unskilled abortion providers. Back in the 1960s, more than 4,000 women in Chicago went through this. They suffered life-threatening effects of botched abortions. This is what America is turning back to. Hospitals are turning away patients, and these women don't really have a choice. Their reproductive rights have been taken away from them. So some resort to back alley abortions. Others turn to underground networks of abortion pills. This has been on the rise since last year. In what world is this okay? Yet America fails to see this. Republicans said that they would make allowances with exceptions. Like in rape cases or when life is at risk, they will allow an abortion. But guess what? In the last 1 year, only 2 exceptions have been allowed. You don't need to be a doctor to know that the number should be much higher than this. Here's what experts say. There is no reliable estimate for patients who seek abortion due to assault or complications. We don't have data. But doctors know that the number is far higher than just 2. Birth defects kill at least 6,200 babies in America every year. Studies say most women who discover a deadly birth defect seek an abortion. According to a survey in 2017, 15% of American women became pregnant as a result of rape. That's about 3.4 million women. Yet only 2 women were allowed to get abortions this past year. American politicians can defend these draconian laws, but the numbers tell the real story of their country. So do women's accounts. In Ohio, a cancer patient broke down. She was refused an abortion. In the same state, at least 3 women threatened to commit suicide. A woman in Texas almost died because she could not get an abortion on time. She ended up in intensive care with sepsis. A Wisconsin woman was left bleeding for 10 days after incomplete miscarriage. And these are adults. What about children? In 2021, dozens of Ohio girls under 14 had abortions. Same for Kentucky. But now even children are being victimized. They're doomed to carry pregnancies to term. Even victims of rape. 13-year-old girls who are going to 7th grade. It is jarring, both physically and emotionally. These abortion laws are a cruel punishment. Women and girls suffer them every day in America. This is the harrowing reality of life in the United States, where the law allows you to wield a gun but not get an abortion. Children can get killed in schools, but unborn fetuses must be saved by law. They call it pro-life. It's the worst kind of vote bank politics. Planet Earth has enough problems to fix, but our world leaders have other priorities. Their newest obsession is mining on the moon. Last week, Russia launched a new lunar mission, their first one in 47 years. What is the goal of the mission? Moscow wants to uncover the moon's secrets. It is believed that many natural elements exist on the moon and they could be mined. But Russia is not the only country that's interested, of course. The US, China and India too are in this race. Our next report tells you about the latest gold rush in space.
The moon has become interesting for space watchers again. Last week, Russia launched a lunar mission. The Russians are returning to the moon after 47 years. America's NASA has its own plans. It's working on a new program called Artemis. NASA's goal is to fly humans to the moon again, a first in over 50 years. China has its own plans to study the lunar surface. And as this report plays on your screens, India's Chandrayaan-3 is flying around the moon as well.
Plus 5 seconds.
Suddenly, the moon has a lot of company. This isn't happening out of the blue. World powers have kicked off a new space race. They think it could be the next gold mine for natural resources. Earlier, the moon wasn't believed to be that useful. But in 2008, that perception changed. That year, India launched the Chandrayaan-1. It made an important discovery. It found water on the moon's surface. Not in a way you would expect. There were no lakes, oceans, or even puddles. Water on the moon exists in the form of molecules, formed by hydrogen and oxygen. This was an important discovery. Water is important, not just for humans to sustain themselves. Elements like hydrogen and oxygen are used to make rocket fuel. But that's not the only thing world powers are after. Experts believe the moon has more elements. One of them could be helium-3. It's a rare element and an important component for nuclear energy. It plays a role in producing energy inside a reactor. Helium-3 is a clean fuel too. It doesn't produce any dangerous waste. But helium-3 is hard to come by on Earth. However, NASA thinks there is ample supply on the moon, as much as 1 million tons if some estimates turn out to be right. The moon's vast surface may have more treasures, like iron, titanium, aluminium, magnesium, even silicon, which is now found in almost every gadget. But how would you extract all these minerals? No one has figured out a way yet. Experts say moon mining might not be economically viable. And with the current technology, it is impossible for humans to dig up the moon and haul its minerals back to planet Earth. Then why explore the idea in the first place? Because the moon's rich resources could serve a different purpose. They could help humans in building permanent bases on the moon. The supply of minerals could be used for construction. And once humans start living on the moon, they won't have to worry about bringing water from Earth. Permanent bases on the moon will boost space exploration. With their help, humans will be able to stay in space longer. This presence will enable missions that go deep into unexplored territories. But these ambitious plans face serious roadblocks. There are no clear laws or rules to mine space yet. And the existing protocols are riddled with loopholes. Right now, there is only one international treaty that applies to all UN members, the Outer Space Treaty of 1966. It says no nation can claim sovereignty over the moon, and space exploration should be carried out for everyone's benefit. But this treaty doesn't say if anyone can claim sovereignty over a part of the moon. This ambiguity is now fueling competition. So, the next time an astronaut plants a flag on the moon, other space programs will be watching closely. And it could be more than a symbolic gesture.
Back to India now, and there is a new standoff between doctors and the governments. Oh, what? Prescriptions. And no, this is not about the handwriting. It's about something more serious. The National Medical Commission, or the NMC, has issued a notice. It's an Indian regulatory body, the National Medical Commission. All doctors must follow what the NMC says. And one of their directives stood out. They've told doctors to stop prescribing branded drugs. Instead, they should prescribe generic drugs. Let me explain what this means. Suppose you have a fever. You go to your family doctor or any doctor. In the past, he or she may have given you a Dolo or a Calpol. Those are branded drugs. Now the regulator is telling them to stop doing this. So what should they do? They should prescribe the generic name of the drug. In this case, it would be paracetamol. So instead of asking you to take a Dolo, your doctor must say, have paracetamol. What is the difference? The branding is the difference. Most medicines are patented by pharma companies. Like Dolo is made by a company called Microlabs. Calpol is made by Johnson & Johnson. Now, these are not lifelong patents. When they expire, other companies are free to replicate these drugs. The color may be different, the shape and taste may be different, the cost too may be different, but one thing remains constant, and that is the active ingredients used to make the medicine. So basically, it's the same drug minus the brand. That's a generic medicine. Now, I know you have more questions. For starters, why is the government doing this? Also, why should you care? We'll try to answer both and more. The government is doing this because of the cost. Generic medicines are cheaper than branded ones. The price difference is anywhere between 30 and 80%. So when your doctor asks you to take a cheaper medicine, the overall cost of healthcare comes down. Your medical bill comes down. That's what the government is trying to do. Make medicines more affordable. That's the idea. Sounds great, right? But doctors have flagged certain concerns. The IMA, or the Indian Medical Association, is protesting against this decision. And this is very significant because the IMA is the largest body of doctors in India. They represent around 350,000 doctors. And the IMA has some tough words for this order. They say it's like, quote unquote, running trains without tracks. Why do they say this? Well, they have raised three concerns. Number one, the quality of generic medicines. It's not good enough. India's drug regulator conducted a survey in the year 2018. It found that 4.5% of all generic drugs were substandard. And this is a huge problem. Branded drugs are researched, tested, and patented. Do generic drugs have the same quality? Doctors say, not yet. Concern number two, availability. Go to your local pharmacist and ask for a generic drug. Chances are they won't have it because the margins are simply not viable. Medical stores make a lot more money by selling branded drugs, so that's what they do. Why would they sell generic ones? And this brings us to concern number three. What will pharmacists do if the generic drug is not available? They will find a branded substitute. Another drug which does the same job, that's what they'll recommend. Now, do you see the problem here? The medical store does not know which drug is better for you. They've probably stocked the most expensive version. So not only will you not get the generic drug, you end up getting the most expensive version of it. Needless to say, it's counterproductive. So the question is, what is the way forward? There is no denying that generic drugs are important. They save people a lot of money. We have numbers from the United States, for instance. In the last 10 years, generic drugs have saved the health industry $2.2 trillion in the US. That's a lot of money. The global generic drug industry is worth around $430 billion. By 2030, it is projected to reach $670 billion. So there is demand. But how do you get doctors on board? How do you break the doctor-pharma nexus while also ensuring the safety of patients? And there is no denying that there is such a nexus. It is true that big pharma pays doctors to prescribe their drugs. I'm sure you've all experienced it. Doctors give you medicines which are easiest to find in medical stores near them. Everyone gets a cut. Just think back to last year. The makers of Dolo were taken to court. They were accused of giving doctors freebies worth 1,000 crore rupees. So commissions do exist. But that's only one side of the story. The other side is this. The doctor-patient relationship is based on trust and familiarity. Your doctor knows which drug is best for you, which combination is best for you. Sometimes it may not be a generic drug. So you can't have a blanket rule for all cases. Yes, generic drugs should be promoted, but only after ensuring that their quality is top class. Track first, then train. What we need is more testing labs. What we need is stricter quality control. Only then will doctors and patients trust generic drugs. And the government knows this. In February, they set aside $79 million to strengthen drug regulation in India. So the idea is positive, we're thinking in the right direction, but we need more checks in place. And now it's time for Vantage Shots. Images that tell the story. We're starting with the United States. Hawaii witnessed devastating wildfires. We've been telling you about them. It was the deadliest wildfire in the US in more than 100 years. We'll show you before and after images of Hawaii. Meanwhile, a video from Arizona is going to unlock a new fear for you. A woman came home to a giant snake camping in her toilet. And the sky across the Balkans was lit up with meteor lights. You don't want to miss this. Finally, we're taking you back in history. Like I said at the beginning of the show, it's not just India's Independence Day today. 5 other countries got independence, including the Republic of Congo. On this day in 1960, Congo gained full independence from France. It is also known as the Congolese National Day. We leave you with that. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.